Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. This is an unusual episode because it is the 4th of, I was going to say July, but August 2022. And atypically, I'm recording this at 08:03, 8 in the morning. The reasoning for that is not really specific. I just happened to, I don't know, I have time usually at this point in the morning. I probably never heard me talk about this before, but I have chronic insomnia. So I'm up at 5 or 5:30 most days. But there's a long period in the morning where I just don't really, other than I go to get coffee and then interact briefly, very briefly with the barista. Other than that, I'm not really feeling that social. And even though this is just literally me standing in an empty room talking at a piece of metal and glass ahead of me, this is kind of social. So I don't generally feel up to this in the morning. And actually, we'll have meetings sometimes before we have a 9 o'clock daily. Although today is Thursday, and we have took some time to get to it, but we have a non-meeting Thursday, meetingless Thursday, or at least that's the goal. And it is one of these things I just feel so exhausted. I always feel bad complaining about it, but I feel so exhausted when I go through days when it's just back-to-back meetings. And I always say this: people work on roofs and on tarmac in the summer in Phoenix, lift heavy shit, go into coal mines, all this kind of stuff. I feel kind of bad complaining about just talking to people, but I feel so drained and exhausted after a day with a lot of meetings. Even when there are people that I like talking with, and they're not even customer facing or things where you have to be on. I don't really enjoy that, and we'll have, either due to somebody is in Europe and that's the best time for it, or for whatever reason, we'll have to have a meeting sometimes at 8 or 8:30. Sometimes even for a little while we had one at 7:30 for a month or two, once a week. And again, even though I'm up hours before that, generally, so it's not like I have to wake up for the meeting, but it just feels violating. It feels, I use the word weirdly because I'm not a religious person, but it feels like a sacred period of my day, and it's just kind of intruding into it. And I'm just not ready mentally for that usually, most days. I don't know what it is today. Maybe it's the lack of meetings. Maybe it's that it's cloudy and rainy, unusually here in Arizona. Whatever it is, I incidentally love the rain, and it's one of the things that makes me feel like I'm not in the right place. Just there are things that are nice about here. Well, here specifically being Gilbert, not as much so. I mean, this is a place, they just had the primary elections, and there are a ton of signs up for people for running for Gilbert City Council. And holy shit. Some of these people, I didn't vote. I think I actually may have voted for one or two, because I looked at before I vote for people, voting takes very little effort. It's one of the reasons why, obviously, if you have to go stand in line for hours, that's a lot. That's a pain in the ass. But when you have the early voting system that we have, that the Republicans are always trying to chip away at, I just get on the list, and then you get the ballot, and it really just takes 15 minutes to fill it out and send it back in. But the problem is, it's not just those 15 minutes, it's that it does, in order to do it well, take some time to do some research. And I think that's very important, because it's tempting to just look at somebody and see the headline stuff and then vote for them. Yeah. But anyway, I live in Gilbert, go through the people running for city council, and it's just bad doors. Even the very best one, and best is a very relative term here, the best one among them is very pro cop and just generally kind of shitty. The it's sort of the scale on which these people operate is so distorted and fucked up. Like this person is like, for me, would be sort of the minimal, about as far right as somebody should be. And yet they are, compared to the rest of the field, pretty far left. And it's just horrible. It's like things are so skewed and fucked up. It's not just Gilbert, but it's, and you kind of look around and you see these signs up, and like there's one dude with a very long name running for council. I guess he's already on the council and he's running to get reelected. I'm not gonna say his name or even attempt it, but he's got funny signs, and you look at these and you're like, I can see why people would vote for you without doing any research. And then, a lot of the signs don't say anything, which is kind of, I would say it's telling, actually. They're cute and they're funny, but they're like, oh, I hate political signs too. Oh, it's almost over. Do you hate being in traffic, and some questions like this. And then he does have a couple, which sort of, you could guess just from Gilbert and all this, but he has a couple where he's like fully showing his hand, and he's like, want more apartments? Don't vote for me. It's like, okay, I see who the fuck you are. Yeah. And then you read about, like, apartments here are apparently a big thing. And a lot of people also are totally opposed to light rail. This is one of the most frustrating, and as somebody who has lived in a city and visited many cities where they are both walkable and have good public transit, being here in Phoenix, and in particular like Gilbert, there's one main stretch of road which you can walk down in, I was going to say 5 minutes, but realistically maybe like 7 minutes at a normal, comfortable walking speed. And then you go from the end of, like from one end to the other of the city, and then you're back just in suburban hell. It's just block after block, and the blocks here are very large. And there's just nothing there. It's just houses. And it's depressing. Houses and mini malls. And, you look at that and you're like, ah. Like, if you're walking across a city, like New York or San Francisco, certainly Paris or London, Tokyo, you walk through and you walk a similar distance and you'll see all this interesting stuff. It's fun, it's cool. There are other people walking, which, I'm not a huge fan of people in general. And, well, I like people in the abstract. I like individuals, but groups of people, especially on the streets, mixed feelings on. But when you're walking and you're like the only person walking, the only pedestrian for miles, you feel like there's something wrong with you. And it's depressing. It's like, this is just how fucked up the cities are here. And it's not like you just feel that way. It's like, there's probably something wrong with you. There's probably, like, you're homeless, or unhoused, I should say, which is incidentally the name of this. I was gonna do beta. So yesterday went to Flower Child and picked up an order. And when I was there, always a schlubby white dude in a giant white truck. I don't know what it is about the white trucks, but it's not just that they have like this pickup truck, which is really straight out of Idiocracy, like so big. This one, I don't remember if it had dualies or not, although a lot of them do. Just as if the ass wasn't fat enough on the truck anyway. They gotta like get a little bit more. And incidentally, of course, dualies make sense if you have a really heavy load, but these people are always just driving their truck like a car. They have the like massive dual cab. So it's basically trying as much as they can to make the truck into what they really need, which is a sedan or an SUV. I guess SUV is even bad. It would be, they really probably want a minivan, because these people probably mostly have kids and a family. And minivan is not sexy, it's not cool, but the inside of a minivan, it's spacious, it's comfortable. It's well designed, it's aerodynamic for what it is, and efficient, relatively speaking. If you have to have a vehicle and you have kids and you're moving a lot of people around, probably that's the thing that you need. And then they started this SUV push because it's like, oh, I don't want to. It's the same thing as people didn't want to drive a station wagon, which was also basically the thing that people actually needed. And instead they had the SUV, the light truck, and all this bullshit. Never mind getting out of the cafe standards and all of this, but you know, because it's a truck. Anyway, and safety standards as well. But they have these giant fucking trucks with a giant fucking cab that get ridiculously low fuel economy. Their lights are up at a point where, like, my car is not that low, and their lights are more than eye level. So for a normal vehicle, you've got these lights and they're just shining in your fucking eyes. And it's one of these things, like, there's no reason you couldn't standardize that even on big trucks to put them lower. I do get, like, you want to put them up higher and then you can have a longer throw, but my car can go a hell of a lot faster than their truck, and my lights are down low and they're fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They don't need the lights up there. It's just like they wanted to have them up there either for aesthetic reasons, or I kind of think to fuck with people. Like, I think that is a not inconsiderable aspect of this. But anyway, this dude, you know, there are several spots. I'm in one, and he pulls in very inexpertly. I mean, this is another thing. Like, you're driving this fucking lame fat ass, whatever the fuck it is, monstrosity, and then you can't control your vehicle. So, and I'm sure they take pride, like, they're like, oh, if I wanted to, I could actually get it into a spot. But, you know, like, fuck you. You don't know what the fuck you're doing and you have no control. So you're taking up 2 spots. I need to take up 2 spots because, you know, I'm American. I mean, whatever the fuck, dude. Just go fuck off and die. Like, honestly. Take up 2 spots and you sit there and you're like, ah. And so I tweeted about this. I took a picture, tweeted about it. And then I get somebody who, there are weirdos on Twitter, to be fair. You may or may not know this, but there are weirdos there. Tweeted about that and then got some rando hiding, of course, behind a sock puppet because these people are chicken shits. And of course, replies to me, sends me a DM that said, like, abolish all, what was it? It was a hashtag. It was like, abolish all beta white dudes named Scott or something like that. Whatever it was. And then he blocks me. Because, I mean, it's funny. I'm such a macho guy. I'm going to hide behind a sock puppet. I'm not going to let you know what my name is, where I am, any of that stuff. And not only that, I'm going to say something shitty to you. Which, I mean, to be fair, not even that shitty. I mean, this is some weak sauce. Yeah. I mean, you're firing, like, this is not a pea shooter. Yeah, you're firing like little pellet gun or something. This is the kind of thing where you get hit in the eye with it and it's like, did I feel something? You know, I mean, come on. It's the guy in a pissing contest and it's just dribbling out and all over his fucking pants. You know, and he's like, oh, I'm so macho. I'm so like, fight me. You know, fight me by hiding behind a shield. Anyway, though, this guy, like, you get this, and it's like, okay, this is cute, but the thing is, and going back, I looked at his reply, because somebody else replied to him, and then it's like, oh, why can't I see this reply? Open it up in a private browser window, and it's like, why is it always beta white dudes who, it's like, okay, what is this beta bullshit? I was going to do another. The episode title today was going to be beta, but apparently I already had one. I almost did it again, but I didn't recognize it because in my feed history, I have beta set in my iPhone and Mac to autocorrect to the Greek letter, and that I would have still caught, but it corrected it to the capital beta, and somehow I just either didn't see it or, which looks like a capital B. So looking through, didn't see it, almost got there, and then I thought maybe I should double check this. I looked it up, and then oh yeah, there's a capital B in there. Hence the Unhoused. I think that's. Did I say I was going to do something else? Never mind. Anyway, rolling back. Now I'm confused. I've confused myself. It's very sad. But coming back to this, you get this thing, and it's like, what is your problem, dude? Like, why are you so insecure? It just like, I don't understand, honestly. I don't really give a shit, to be honest. But you're such a fucking puny weakling that you need to get in this giant tank of a truck, really, and hide behind that. And you gotta hide behind a sock puppet, and you gotta hide behind a block. I mean, like, these people are such fucking cowards. Like, such little wimpy micro. I understand, like, the micro penis thing is. But first off, not trying to be ableist. Nothing wrong with that. But the giant truck is compensating for something, and it's not necessarily that there's something wrong with their junk, but metaphorically, like, there's something wrong with them in terms of confidence or whatever the fuck. I mean, these people are just hollow shells who have, maybe they're NPD, maybe it's something else, I don't know, but there's nothing in there, and the slightest pinprick will just cause them to deflate, and they've got to defend themselves against it. So they can't be threatened in any way. Can't have any little chink in the armor that somebody can see. So you got to get in that big truck and be on the road and just feel like, oh, I can drive over people if I wanted to. I can be a dick in my truck. Yeah, it's like, okay, dude. Go get some therapy and leave the fucking rest of the world alone. I really do, like, I joke about it, but I think, you look at Trump, and frankly also you look at Biden, like, and I'm not trying to both sides this, but both of these people, I would say, have NPD. I'm not a therapist, I'm not trained in any way, so obviously, allegedly, in my opinion, all that shit, but both of these people wanted to be president. I mean, Biden wanted to be president for decades. Basically my entire life. Like, he's been either running for office or trying to get in there or whatever. And you think about it and it's like, okay, I can understand. Like, Bernie does not want to, I don't think he wants to be president, but he actually wants to help people. And if he was president, like, there's a reason that he would want to do it, and it's mainly because then you could have some degree of platform and power to at least try to help people. I get that, right? But this is a thing where people like these, they want to be president, not because, and I don't even think it's because they necessarily want the power. I mean, maybe the power unto itself, but not to actually do anything with it. And then, it's just the prestige. It's like, oh, Mr. President. Like, Trump, honestly, like, if he just had people walking around calling him Mr. President for the rest of his life, it's just such a narcissistic wound on these people that they just need that. They need people kissing their asses. They need, they need to feel superior in some way. And it's a pervasive problem in our society. And I think this is why, not only that these people exist in the first place, but the fact that, people have, like, the fact that Trump exists, it's sad and pathetic. But, okay, it's one individual. The fact that Trump exists and isn't just universally considered so abhorrent that you would never, like, just completely, he should be shunned from society. Like, this is a person who, and I mean this well before he got so openly racist and nationalistic and all of this kind of stuff. Like, in the 80s, you should see Trump and you'd go like, yeah, fuck that guy. This is not a person who, like, just nobody should hang out with him. Nobody should support him in any way. And you don't understand also, like, why are there an endless number of people who are willing to just, like, come up and, go to bat for the guy. Like, every single person who does this fucks somebody or gets fucked over in the end. And then people continuously think that they're not, it's like, it's going to be different with me. It's just bizarre and sad. And I feel like if all these people and all the people that are voting for him had just like a little bit of therapy, and I'm not saying that therapy is like a panacea that cures everything. And certainly also, like, in order for therapy to work, you have to be in the right place, right? You can't just go to therapy. It's not like you can give somebody an injection of therapy and then they're magically cured. You have to do some work. So getting them to the right place would be hard. But I feel like so many people are just like wounded little children. And this is why they have the big truck. This is why they need to have the gun. I got my gun, so you can. Yeah, like, come the fuck on, dude. You don't live in the Old West. You don't need your fucking gun. You don't need all these penis extension things. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, and the fact that they're not ashamed, they think this is good. It's like, come on. So anyway, all that stuff aside, the thing I didn't really want to talk too much about that other than to just mock and deride these people. The thing I did want to talk about after I decided, like, oh, I've already done a beta one, is homelessness or houselessness. It's an interesting thing. This is one of those things like global warming versus climate change, where I don't know what the right thing to call it is. And I do understand, like, I think it came from George Carlin. Maybe there's something that predates this, but there's a bit that he had where he's like, oh, they're not homeless, they're houseless. Which I guess it makes sense. A home is an idea and a house is an actual physical manifestation of that. Or it's a place, it's a shelter. Sure, call it houselessness. I don't know that and I'm calling this unhoused rather than homeless. I don't know that it matters, really. It's just one of these, but let's call it houselessness. Whatever it is. LA City Council, I think it was yesterday, if not yesterday, like a few days ago, but I think it was yesterday, passed a resolution. And incidentally, the LA City Council, LA is a Democratic city, supposedly. City Council, majority, I think super majority Democrats. And it's not lost on me that you have LA, massive problem with houselessness, massive problem with people living on the streets. San Francisco, Democratic city. And also, like, LA has $1 trillion a year gross domestic product just for the city. So the United States is like 21 trillion per year. So that one city alone is about a 20th of, holy shit, right? 5% of the US GDP, more or less, coming from just LA. San Francisco, $500 billion a year. Democratic city, Democratic mayor, Democratic mayor who didn't go in the Pride Parade because the Pride Parade was excluding cops. So like, fuck her. I think her name is Mayor London, so get fucked, Mayor London. But it makes me want to like these fucking people. But again, run by Democrats. A lot of GDP. The GDP in it's not just like a $500 billion GDP per year, but it's that the GDP per capita is, I think, like $75K in San Francisco. It's like $74K in Los Angeles County. In New York, it's I think it's $1.5 trillion a year. So GDP per capita is, oh no wait, LA is 70, New York is 74, San Francisco is 75 as of this year. It fluctuates a little bit, but basically 2022, those are about where they're going to be. And again, Democratic city, Democratic, although fucking pig mayor, like, Jesus Christ. I know I've talked about this guy before, but I don't know how anyone could watch his video with the, like, this was an insane video that he made where he's like talking about drug paraphernalia and pops open the, he's in a house, which I guess is his, gets a backpack, pulls out a crack pipe, and he's like, well, is this, and it's like, holy shit, like, the whole thing was just fucking like nightmare fuel Like, I mean, if it was a joke, it would be funny. But the fact that he's serious about it, you should look at that and then go like, there's no way in hell this dude should ever be mayor. Motherfucker gets elected. Yeah. And again, allegedly a Democrat, democratically run the city, all of this kind of stuff. $11.5 trillion, small difference there. $11.5 billion a year police force in LA or in New York. All of these things, like all these cities dump so much money into the cops. They have so much money per capita. And that these 70 to 75K per year GDP per capita, that is including all of the unhoused people in these places. And yet they can't fucking house people. And in fact, the places where they actually have done the math and they've gone like, it's actually cheaper to not just put, like, you don't want to warehouse people into, like, the problem is you put a bunch of unhoused people into like a kind of shacky, like essentially like the projects kind of thing. And you're guaranteeing that things are going to go bad. It's going to suck for them. People are not going to want to live there because it's dangerous and scary. There's no, it's just like, oh, we're just going to warehouse people. This is not a solution. But giving people houses, giving people homes, giving people apartments magically works. And it's much cheaper. It's ridiculously so. And it's cities like fucking Salt Lake City, of all fucking places, doing that. Or I think it was Dallas. Was it Dallas or Houston? I want to say Dallas. Some red Texas city. I think it's red. Maybe it's not. But yeah, like, these are not cities that should be at the vanguard of this. They're not cities that, should be going, like, oh, this is the thing to do. Yeah, and you have the Democrats, like, just, again, the city council basically made it illegal to be homeless in about 20% of LA. Now, I'm munging the city versus the county of LA, but, semi-fungible. They're not the same thing, obviously, but, the idea is basically there. So you look at this, and it's just so fucked up and so unnecessary. And again, I always go back to this Deep Space Nine episode. I don't remember the title, but it's actually like 3 episodes. I think it's a 3-parter. And basically, it's about the Bell Riots, which in the Star Trek history, Star Trek lore, were in 2024. This guy named Bell started, a riot in what was called a sanctuary district in San Francisco. So what happened, and this is eerie actually for me because this was made in the 90s, and you look at this and they're predicting like 2024, this massive problem with people being out of work or not making enough money, basically like living on the streets. So in their lore, they hid them away in what they called sanctuary districts. Basically just like cordoned off parts of the city, put fences up, and shoved all the people in there. And the thing is, this was like this horrible dystopic thing at the time that, you're looking at that and you're like, that seems kind of extreme. And then you look at the reality and what they're doing instead, and LA is a particular example of this because not far from LA, like, LA is not Phoenix. They have, a bit of an ocean climate, so it's that coastal thing gives them a bit more moderation. But you don't have to go that far from LA to be in pretty hellish desert. And they push people out of the city and they don't have any place to go, so they end up being in these places which are, again, not as bad as Phoenix, but not much worse or not much better. And people are just dying on the streets there because they have no place else to go. They have no shelter. It's just such a shame. And the fact that Deep Space Nine, I mean, this is like shocking to me. A, they predicted this pretty well, including the timing. And B, what they predicted that looked so bad is actually massively better than what people are actually doing. Like, what people are actually doing is not even pretending. They're looking at this. I mean, you look at the fucking New York mayor. He's talking about how, like, ripping out this one just, like, you want to kill people. I mean, it sucks so fucking much. Ripping out fucking benches from subway stations because people have no place to live and they're sleeping there. And then it's like, I mean, that's not even hostile architecture. It's like, we're just going to rip out My mom, she can walk around pretty well, but she needs to sit, you know? And now where the fuck does she sit? Like what the fuck is wrong with you people? Why do you have so little compassion? Like why are you such fucking terrible people? How do you even convince somebody to look at somebody living on the street and think, oh, maybe I should help them. I have the capacity to help them. And especially, like individually, okay, I understand. I have, a little bit that I can give to help people, but it's not that much. But when you're on the goddamn city council of a city like this, where you could totally afford to house all of these people. You could totally afford to feed all of these people. You could totally afford to make their lives much better and to bring them up. And instead, you're fucking them over and you're spending more money on policing and more money on, like throwing them in prisons, which of course end up being private prisons. I mean, so you get them getting out of the city and then also throwing them into prisons where, thanks to our 13th Amendment, which didn't actually ban slavery, which is again like such a fucked up thing about our country. Like a little carve out. Like slavery is still, slavery is banned, but wink, wink. As a, I mean, come on. And so I don't know. It drives me insane, and I don't know how you can get through to people like this. It's so horrifying. And again, and I'm not trying to both sides this. I'm not trying to say like the Democrats are as bad as the Republicans or even on the same. But you look at it and it's like, well, why are these cities which are run by Democrats, which have populations which are largely, I'm not going to call them left-leaning because they would probably call themselves moderates, or they might use the word liberal, but they really are, if you put them on the political spectrum, largely right of center. They're left of the Republicans, for sure, but they're right of center, like like zero question. They like to think of themselves as kind of leftish. This is a thing. Like my partner and I broke up a few months ago now, and I've been on not multiple dating apps, but I've been on Hinge, and on there, this has been an interesting experiment for me actually. I've never in my life, a couple of times when I've been single, I've gotten on these apps, and I've had some dates come out of them. I've never had like a relationship come out of them. Somehow that's always, when it has happened, it's always been like somebody I met in life. And then, but I'm on there, and one of the things I originally had blocked off people who, for religion, I was actually like, I put on like anything but Christian or Catholic. And really, strictly speaking, should probably be just like atheist or non-religious or something. My preference would be non-religious, but but I was trying to be pretty open. And then for political views, this is a complicated one because like liberal in the UK means something very different than it means here. Although maybe it's not so different actually is kind of the secret. Like the liberal here is actually somebody who labels themselves as a liberal here, probably not that far from the UK liberal, even though they might see themselves in a different way. But yeah, I had just liberal there because that's the only, they didn't have like a leftist option. And I blocked out everybody else. And so, you go through and you get like a picture of people and kind of like, and maybe interesting, maybe not. Go through, X everybody out, and pretty soon it's like, oh, there's nobody here. Nobody new to show you. In Phoenix, at least. And basically matched with nobody here that I was, at all really interested in. And then in traveling, I've put and not just in traveling, actually, I've occasionally, I've plunked the thing in San Francisco, in LA, in New York, in Paris and London, and in Sydney and Melbourne, and maybe a couple of other places, but I've tried to sort of see what it's like in other places. Interestingly enough, a lot more people matched with me who seemed interesting, and a lot more people seemed interesting in sort of the Bay Area, probably than any place. A little bit in San Francisco or in LA, less so. Um, but it was interesting to see the differences in groups there. Here, and it's not just like I've got the range set to like 250 miles, so it's not just that I'm in Gilbert. But here, it's just like I don't. It makes me feel like again, I'm not in the right place because I don't feel like my people, so to speak, are here. In as much as I have people, and yeah, I sit there and I'm looking through this, and then you run out of stuff, and then I'm kind of getting bored. So I'm like, well, not bored. I hate saying that because it conveys a different meaning than I mean. Um, Very rarely in my life would I actually say I'm bored. I can always find stuff to occupy myself, but I'm sort of like want more there, want more options. So I go in and I check, like instead of hard requirements, I'm like, okay, this is like a nice thing. They have an option where it's like, this is a hard deal breaker, and then this is, you can unselect that, and it's like, well, your preference is this, but yeah. So obviously, for politics, conservative is not. It always bothers me also that they call themselves conservative. I've spoken at length about this, but you're not a conservative. You're not. I mean, if you were a conservative, you would look at the ROI from public education and you would go put all your fucking money there, because I mean, if you had an investment, if I offered you an investment and I was like, in 5 years, you will make several times, maybe 4 or 5 times your money back, and certainly in the longer run, even more, you would, like, you'd be crazy. You'd be crazy not to do that. If you're conservative, you'd actually protect the environment because we fucking breathe the air, we drink the water, you'd care about, I mean, it's in the goddamn name, conservation, conserve. Probably conserve things. So it annoys me that the branding is so fucked up there too. But then, you think about like this in the politics, they have not political, and then they have moderate. And you might notice that little kind of like yuck face, whether you heard it or saw it, but they say moderate. It's like, eh. The thing is, like now, and not political too, I don't know how you can be in the world as it is today and consider yourself to be either one of these things. Like you just basically have to be completely not paying any attention at all, or indifferent, utterly indifferent. But yeah, I start looking at these people, and it's just like, yeah, okay, there are a lot more people that fall under these categories, but it's just like not for me. And also, I mean, not just not for me, but you see one of the people. I mean, this is just an example that I'm pulling out, but one of them says she's a moderate, and then you look at, you can put in like little things based on prompts. She's got something like, "What are you afraid of?" Is the prompt, and then she says, I don't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but it was like radical liberal. She said radical liberals, which is funny also because like liberal. I mean, there's classical liberals and neoliberals and all this kind of stuff. Radical liberal does not really. I mean, first off, like even the literal direct meaning of that is not, I think, what she conceives of there. And again, like the moderate thing, moderate, I think today really means you're right of center. If you label yourself that, conservative means you're like a radical anarcho-capitalist, which is totally conservative, but somehow, or you're, I guess there are two possibilities. Either you're way the fuck out to the right, and probably racist, and probably a little fascist or fascist adjacent at least, or you just like your family uses that word and you like the branding because it's like what you're used to. Just like the people who were raised with guns and they don't reflect on it, and then you're like, oh, I'm a conservative. It's like, okay, you're not, but also, you're with these people whether you know it or not. Moderate, I think, is similar. Moderate is one of those things also where it's kind of a cheat code. It's the same thing like, both sides are, it makes it seem like you did your work, makes it seem like you did your research. I have carefully examined all of the evidence, and I've found that on balance, both sides have problems and both sides have, it sounds like that. But in reality, when you're making this kind of statement, and it's like one side is not even a crypto-fascistic, like, Christian theological, like whatever the fuck. And then the other side is like, well, I think everybody should have health care. And it's like, and this is what she means by radical liberals, of course, too, are like the idea that the Republican Party is pushing, or the people who call themselves conservatives are pushing for leftists. But in reality, like, literally, and I don't even think I'm that far, well, on the political compass, I'm pretty far to the left. But I don't think I'm like that radical. I'm definitely not like in the communist scale of things, although I do really like the sort of post scarcity Star Trek, basically communist utopia idea. Um, People kind of do what they want, what they're interested in, what they find fulfilling. Everybody is housed, everybody is fed, and strictly speaking, like if you wanted to just fuck off your whole life and play video games, you could do that. Or if you want to write poetry or do art or explore or develop new technology or whatever the fuck you want, those are all on the table. And if you just wanted to study for your whole life, which is, again, given my, like in a better world, I'd probably have like several PhDs, an MD, maybe a JD, and I'd just be in school, like studying and working on stuff, and then doing research and like developing things as well. But I definitely wouldn't be like building stupid products. I wouldn't be doing a lot of the stuff that I'm doing that pays acceptably well. Although one of the great things about our system is that I get paid a decent amount. I don't get paid as much as Gil, and I haven't been paid a decent amount for that long. It's going on like 9 months now. That it's like to the point up until February or March this year, it was definitely like the point where I was kind of falling behind. Now I'm to the point where I kind of am passively, being able to kind of keep a little bit ahead. But even so, I have $250,000 almost, well, 225K, basically within an error bar of $250,000 of student loan debt. And it will be $250,000 probably in a year. Just the way interest works. And I have low interest loans, but I will literally, like, if our company ends up hitting it big, and there is a path to that, but if we do, and I make millions of dollars or more out of that, I will actually be able to pay off my student loans and have a decently okay life. Absent that, I would be paying them off until probably like my 70s. And if I had a normal job, like, you look at how fucked up the world is. If I had a job that was just paying, now granted, if I was out in the free market, I'd probably be making more than I'm making now. But I'm making more than twice, the median household income. And if I was just making that, I don't know how I would live. And I certainly would never make any headway on those loans. I would just be underwater perpetually, forever. Like, there's no way I could escape that. And even if I was making, like 100K a year, sounds like a lot of money, right? Compared to the median household income, it's a bit. But then you start like looking at that and you divide it out, and it's like, well, and yeah, granted, I fly, not cheap. I have a pretty nice car. My rent here is pretty cheap. So I on a relative sliding scale and all that. But yeah, I could be more capital efficient. But the thing is, I need some kind of car living here. If I lived in a city, I could get away without one. Here, without a car, I would be stranded. And even if I had a nice bike in good repair and I didn't have a foot that was incidentally, you can't tell because I'm standing, but I have some kind of a just a bump on my foot. I guess it's essentially like the word is completely escaping me. Um, totally, this is a thing that annoys the shit out of me. I used to have, like, I've always been bad with names, but words, it's not exactly aphasia, but just words that, I've got a whole set of other words like node or nodule or all these things. But it's really, and I have the picture of it, more or less, in my head, but I have this bump on my foot. And it's basically meaning, like, I can stand in a weird way, but if I try to walk or I stand up in a normal way and I put weight on my right foot, it is kind of excruciating. And it's also like, because I'm holding my foot to avoid putting pressure on this one spot, it's hurting my foot in addition to that. And I think also like making me walk funny, which is probably like having tertiary effects, which is great. I will have this removed, although like I have allegedly good insurance. And I have a sister who's a doctor. So my care is much better, I would say, in my experience with the system, much better than a lot of people's. I was in LA, I needed to get an appointment. She was able to connect with me with somebody and get me one the same day because this thing popped out. It's been like intermittently popping out and then disappearing for a year, year and a half. But it popped out and it this time didn't go away. And there's nothing I could do about it. Got to see the guy the same day again. And I'm going to get surgery. I have MRI scheduled for, Tuesday. It's Thursday now, so it's coming up. And we'll go back to LA and get surgery for that pretty soon. And calling these people and dealing with the stuff and scheduling the MRI and all this stuff, it's all so painful. Like, even if money was no object, if money was no object, I would literally pay an assistant to do this shit because it sucks. It sucks so much. And this is not even like calling the insurance company. Like, when I had my colonoscopy and then I had to deal with the insurance company not paying for a bunch of shit, after, the doctor said, this is a necessary thing because you have this family history, and technically on paper, my insurance company should have said, yes, that's, but they wouldn't do it. Fuck you, United Healthcare. Not that they're special. They all are shit. Like, there's not one for-profit insurance company that is any damn good. These companies, like, I'm totally opposed to the death penalty. These companies need a corporate death penalty. And I understand like a huge chunk of the U.S. economy. This is a fucked up thing. I don't even want to get into it, but a huge chunk of the U.S. economy comes from people working in healthcare. And I don't mean doctors and nurses and people who are actually, doing healthcare, giving us healthcare. I mean administration. I mean insurance companies. I mean dealing with insurance companies and billing on the other side. It's just fucking nightmare fuel. And similarly, a huge, huge chunk of our economy is people working in defense. We have like rapidly approaching $1 trillion a year defense budget. Most of that is going to air quotes contractors, so private enterprise, because we have this horrible fetish of that's like the best way to do everything. And then you got that, and then it's like, okay, you got this. And this is, all of these jobs come from these companies. All of it is basically, and this is the most infuriating thing, because it's basically government subsidized labor. But instead of doing stuff that's actually like investing in our future, or, we could be teaching people, again, super high ROI. We could be building infrastructure and updating infrastructure. We could be making walkable cities. We could be making cities with great public transportation networks and doing all of these things like public spaces that are beautiful and nice to spend time in. We could be doing this and probably still not spending as much money, but instead we're just pouring it all into the fucking police and the military industrial complex, the healthcare industrial complex, and all this shit. And our lifespans are going down. Outcomes for pretty much everything are shittier here than other places. It's funny, like we're making abortion illegal, but also at the same time, maternal mortality is really high, infant mortality is really high. It's just like a shambles, a just disgusting fucking joke, like, and beyond a shame. Just like the unhoused problem, because we have the capacity to deal with these things. We could be damn near a utopia. And instead, we've chosen, and it is a deliberate, willful choice. It's not like individually we're going like, yeah, I want to be in a dystopia rather than a utopia. But to some extent, I mean, it's, I got in an argument yesterday with somebody about this, but it's an interesting thing. And I think this will, I've got like 4 minutes to my meeting, so I've got to wrap this up. But this will kind of put a bow on some of the stuff I talked about. Trump and Biden and all these people, all the Republicans and Democrats and Congress, all these, somebody was saying, like they're all working for the same millionaires and billionaires, and and then this person comes out and it's like, well, what do you think? There's some kind of conspiracy. And the thing is, there doesn't need to be a conspiracy. Like I don't know why people, I understand, I guess, why some people get to thinking in conspiratorial terms, but dismissing the fact that this is the case because you don't believe it's a conspiracy is wrong. And the problem is, it doesn't need to be a conspiracy. You don't need a cabal of powerful people hiding behind closed doors, working in concert and all this kind of stuff. Literally all you need is a bunch of people who have power and money working in their own self-interest, and then a bunch of people who are not paying attention, who either don't vote or just vote blindly for fucking Katie Hobbs, who of course won. I'm not voting for that motherfucker. I don't give a shit. Like I know how bad, and the thing is, I know how bad Carrie Lake is. I will not vote for Katie Hobbs any more than I would vote for Carrie Lake or for Trump. I lump the three in the same category. And again, not the same, not that different. But like it's not that Biden is like working behind the scenes necessarily with Manchin and Sinema, but Biden certainly is content with what they're doing, and you can tell this because zero public pressure. They're both on their committees. They're both, Manchin is chairing fucking natural resources of all fucking things. No pressure at all applied, and so and also like they don't want to be piddly little Republicans. They're probably not going to leave. And even if they did leave, like, it's not, the consequence of that is not that great. It's just fucking infuriating. Got in this argument with this person though, and it's like, just would not see, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It can just be a lot of people acting independently in a way that happens to look coordinated. It's just like there's a pressure differential. The air flows. It's not like the air over here is talking to the air over here and they're going, let's go the same direction. It's just there's a pressure differential, and then things flow from high pressure to low pressure. It's a physical, natural property. And then also, and this one, like, I'm gonna have to wrap up because I've got like a minute. But just the whole thing, like, would not understand why Biden would want to be president just for the sake of being president. It's like, oh, he wants to do good things and he wants to do, and he just can't. Or, like, why does he want to look impotent? He doesn't want to look impotent. He doesn't look impotent. He's got like all these people defending him, like saying he's trying, saying he's doing these things, saying that, like this thing that actually is helping oil companies is somehow magically pushing for climate protection. There's so many goddamn things like that. But, it's not that he wants to look like that. It's just like, understand. And this is a person also, she's telling me like, I understand what NPD is and what it's like. It's like, clearly you fucking don't, because she could not fathom why someone would want to be president just for the sake of being president. And like, how do you not understand something like this after you just had Trump, who literally, like, that's his whole thing. He doesn't care about any of the other stuff. He just wants the prestige. And Biden, I think, is like, maybe not the same, but they're in the same vicinity. With that, I now have to go to a meeting. So thank you, as always, and say Jen.